Hey guys, this will be video 9 for the Les Paul restoration. Let me check and see if it's focusing. I wasn't planning on doing a video tonight about the maple because I had mentioned in the last video that the next time I do a video I'll probably have this carved down and it'll be a lot more attractive. But I got to thinking, I thought this is the thing that most of us don't know. And I needed to do one more video and really focus on how I start working a top down and before I just go guns loaded and just really start carving away with my either a gouge chisels, whether I'm doing it by hand or whether I'm using machinery or even like a sanding tool. It's amazing. When I was in South Florida restoring my boat, I ended up using these sanding discs on a grinder, high-speed grinder, and man, it was just amazing what you could, you could really do some incredible shaping once you got good with the grinder. I don't recommend that here though, because we're working in such a small area. Even though maple is kind of hard, it'll get away from you before you know it, and you've put a gouge in there. This is something, and I'm always going to refer back to Robert Benedetto. One of the things I learned early on, he was talking about don't just go in and carve down to your finished point. You need to stay above all of your finish, all of your targets. Stay well above it. So on that note, let me see if I can just get the flashlight on, and I want to kind of show you how the top is kind of. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I think that shows okay. I'm probably 3 millimeter, not quite 3/16 of an inch. Let me just look around the camera. It's definitely over 1/8 of an inch, but in some spots it's just barely under 1/8. But as you can see, I've already, let me get a better grip on it. I've already kind of started working to the curvatures. Even though it's definitely high, let's see if I can explain this. What I'm getting at, this isn't done with a CNC machine. There's no reason that you have to set up a router and do step routing and crap like that. Every bit of this should be done by feel. You really should be able to see it and feel it come into play. Like when it's cool. I can feel a flat right there. I feel a flat right there. That feels really good back there. But it's got a lot of ripple in it. But that's good because I got a feel for the wood. These two pieces of wood are much more hard. Well, not much. A little bit more harder than this piece. So when you're over here working with the machinery, you better really stay on top of what you're doing, because you'll carve away. If you're over here working and you're used to what the amount of pressure you're having to apply, and then you get over here on a different piece, it's a different world, and you better be prepared. And did I make a mistake? No, absolutely not. But I did. At one point, I went all the way down to my finish line. Now, I intentionally, let me show it. I intentionally, sorry about that. See that line? See that line right there? That line right there is at least 1/16 of an inch above my final target, if not even more than that. So even though I went down and kissed the line, doesn't matter, I was still 1/16 of an inch. But the last thing you would have wanted to have done was put this body on a router table and take some sort of any sort of bit, like a surfacing bit, inverted, and go, okay, we want this to be 1.5 or 1 5/8 or 1 3/4, or I'm sorry, or 2 inches in our finished dimension. And then we take that table mounted bit, and then we take our body and then we run it around there. We're all excited because, oh wow, yeah, we can see our finished product. Then you come up here and you make a mistake. Guess what you just did? You just went beyond your finish line. Now you got major damage you've just done. So as Benedetto really drove home, work down to your target, and don't just carve this side down to your target and leaving all the crap mass wood over here. Work the whole thing. So you've got a feel for the wood, you got a feel for the sharpness of the tools that you might be working with, the speed of the tools you're working with, just all those variables. And I've never heard of anybody talk about this before, but I used to do this when I was carving my arch tops, especially the maple. I would wet it a little bit, and it made it so much easier to carve. It's hilarious, and I've never heard anybody talk about that. I'm not saying saturate it, but you could just moisten the wood a little bit, and it just cuts so much easier. So that's no charge for that. So on that note, how did I approach this, and from what angle? If you remember this middle plank, all of them were flat, but they were different thicknesses. These two out here were pretty close to the same thickness, but this one in the middle was about 1/8 of an inch thicker. So where I'm going with this is I couldn't just, I may be getting ahead of myself just a little bit, but I think this will make sense once the video progresses. The idea is to use the body, and after you've jigsawed this off, to use the actual body itself and let the bearing run along the body, and then you're shaving off that piece right there. And anybody that uses a router knows which way to cut that. Your bit is turning this way, so you want to be cutting from here around the side here. If you try to start over here on this side, the router is turning clockwise, and the first thing it's going to do, it's going to start doing what's called a climbing cut, and it's going to grab, and it's going to take off, or either it's going to tilt the router or kick the router, and you're going to do damage. So I did jump ahead of myself a little bit there. I probably should have talked about this wood was overhanging, and how do we go about taking the jigsaw, and all of this is a weird dimension up here. We don't want to cut it from overhead, because we run the risk of damaging the sides. Maybe get a little bit too close, or we're so scared of damaging the side that we rough it out, but we left 1/4 of an inch. Oh great, now you get to route all that off and run the risk of burning up your bit or just making your job more difficult. So what do you do? You got this, and you remember in all the pictures how that maple was overhanging. You simply take your pencil and you highlight where you really know the finish is, and then you're sitting there thinking, okay, then I got a flat surface here, and all I got to do is put my jigsaw on this surface and start jigsawing, right? Well, unfortunately, it won't work, because the body is so thick that as the jigsaw blade comes up at its highest point, it's actually above the wood, and if you're pushing forward, then it starts jabbing into the wood, and it gives you a really bad cut. So what did I do? I went inverted. I took the jigsaw, and keep in mind I've got this on a clamp surface, and I knew that the surfaces below it were flat, so I inverted my jigsaw. And which way did I cut? Oh yeah, I cut back this way and just watched the blade. Keep in mind that the jigsaw's upside down, but I'm cradling it and I'm holding the jigsaw in place very gingerly, and then watching the blade, keeping it off the body. If it looks like I got a little bit too close, stop or come out. And then I was able to go around the whole body inverted and cut it off like that. Then I was able to flip the body over and I've got these, these flat surfaces here, and rather than trying to route all of 3 at once, I took the jig that I had made earlier that did all the initial tear out. Let me just look over the camera. And since that was flat, I was able to, most of you guys that do woodworking, you know about this trick where you can take masking tape, and you put some masking tape down on that surface, and then you put some masking tape down on this surface, and then you take what I call jet glue, or the CA glue, and you do a couple little dots in those spots, and then you simply glue this and clamp it. It sets in about 10 seconds. And then you take your router. Oh, I do have my base. Then you simply run your router. And I've got this rigged up base where it's just a little bit extra, and I'm able to allow that to cantilever if I need to. And then you just cut off, well, see, I'm going the wrong direction. You start from over here and you cut in this direction. And you don't try to make just one cut, just ease a little bit, shave it off, come back. Don't try to go over here. You're not ready for that piece yet. So I think you got that. But what I'm saying is make 3 or 4 passes and continually be watching the bearing. I'm so glad I thought of this. Guess what would happen? Guess what would happen if you set your bearing down here and you're just rocking and rolling? Oh, this is going great. This is going great. Guess where it goes? The bearing is looking for a surface. You're going to plow into the body. You're going to do catastrophic damage. So think through these things, such as this right here. I'm sorry about the camera work. This is pretty important though, even though it's kind of chaotic. If you've got your bearing running around across here and it hits a little spot like that, you'll get a dip up here. And if this is a clear finished top, and let's say you weren't going to do binding, you just lost it. You just destroyed it. So I think that makes sense. And don't ask me how I know that. I learned the hard way a long time ago, and since then I always double check my path. I better clarify this as well. There's no reason to run the bearing down here. Find out where the blade is on the router bit and just barely allow it to go beyond, if right at where your target is. Now keep in mind, this piece was thinner than the center piece. When I set the router bit depth on to route this one, it was a different depth than when I got to this piece. I had to lower the bit for the center piece. What's the last thing you want to do? Forget to raise that bit back up when you do that third piece, because you run the risk of coming down here and hitting the black in the event something happened, or it just kissed it and it shaved off some of that black paint. And let's say we were going to try to save all this black paint over here because it's cool and vintage. Well, because you didn't take the time to set the depth on the router bit 3 different times, you made a mistake. So that's why I wanted to do this video. There's a lot of silly small things that will just ruin your job. Doesn't matter how good your epoxy is, how good your tap tones are coming along. From a visual standpoint, you'll end up having to make a repair. And thank God this guitar is paint grade. If I do have a problem, I'll be able to repair it. There won't be any reason to panic. But, it is what it is. Let me think for a second. What else about the top? I already discussed the different hardnesses of material and how your tool will react. Only carved down to a point. And I'm going to stop. It's late in the afternoon. Actually, it's almost 10:30 or 10:45. I'm not going to do any more tonight. You don't want to do any of this type finish work when you're tired. So, but I wanted to get this video up so you guys would have something to kind of be considering when you make that transition from all the structural glue up and making sure, this line right, that line right there is in line here, and this line's in line here, and everything's, once all that's in place, Now it's time to change gears and slow down and start, making sure that we don't make mistakes like that. And if you think maybe you're going to make a mistake like that, put a plug in it. Put a plug in it, glue it in, and shape it so it's a flat surface. Now you know where to drill. When I say a plug, I mean maybe 1/8 of an inch thick, so that you can just break it out later on and then sand and shape that later on. Okay, that got a little bit long-winded, but let's see. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. I talked about the target, the target line. I'm still well above my finish, and also, if you haven't noticed, I'm still going to be doing a route. I'll still be doing a channel for the binding. God, the lighting's horrible. So I'll still be doing the channel for the binding. So even if I did mess up right out here on the end, it's not the end of the world, because I'm going to be routing that off anyway. But what I meant by the shaping, I think I've already covered that clear enough. You just want to get a feel for the top. You want to get a feel for the arch. You want to study your subject, kind of just run your hands across it. You'll feel where the arch needs to. I can already tell you. I already know the gradation. What's the word? The grade, I guess, of that. How it's supposed to just ease off and then all of a sudden start coming back up. If this was a 54, this would have a recurve. It would actually go down and then come back up a little bit. And some arch tops are that way, but it's not very comfortable because it creates a sharp edge. This Les Paul, Les Paul, this year model, they don't ever really flatten out. As it hits the edge, it's still on a bit of a pitch up. Not much, maybe 1 degree, maybe 2 degrees. But last thing you want to be doing is trying to chisel out to your finish point, and then you cut off the corner. So the epoxy is amazing. It's actually getting, it's setting much quicker than I was expecting it to. And I don't want to start doing tap toning, but the tap tone does sound pretty good so far. What else might I want to cover? Yeah, this is I got the cover in. Let me see if I can just look over the phone here. This initial, and I got the cover for the top as well, so they're pretty cool, coming together. But if you'll notice something here, I'll just put the light up here so you can really, oh crap, I should have gotten a pick tool. All right, this dimension here is too narrow. I gotta move that out a little bit, but I intentionally started with a small. I didn't have this cover. This is a Gibson USA cover, whereas the little cover I had was one of the metric, the more like an Epiphone. So what I did, well, this one's fitting. This one's fitting fairly good, but it's a little bit tight. I'm gonna have to shave a little bit more off of this, but it's better to start and have too much wood in there, because you can always come back and shape it in later on. But that's pretty cool because it's beginning to look like a Les Paul. I don't know if I should talk about how I did the carving on the front. It's extremely dangerous what I did, and I wouldn't really recommend it unless you've been working wood a long time. And let me just get that out of the way. I used a hole saw on a right angle DeWalt. I think that's a DW 160. Yeah, 160V. That's a 4.5 inch hole saw. Extremely dangerous when you're working with something like that freehand. But I'll show you. So this is for not for the faint at heart, and this is not for the novice. You can get seriously hurt working with this tool, especially if you had it up on a bench and you're at body level and you got a loose shirt on. You see where I'm going with this? The thing I like about the right angle drill, it does not have a a trigger lock. I can't lock the trigger so that it'll run continuously. If that got away from you with the trigger lock on, it's not gonna stop. And I'm serious when I say that could do some incredibly horrific damage to you, life and limb. So since I got that out of the way, just like you would run a grinder, um, it's turning this way. So what you want to do is be working on the right side. Don't ever, if you let the left side touch, it's going to kick back. Because it's going this way, it's going to grab the wood and kick back. Just like I was talking about with the router bit, doing the climbing cut versus the following cut. With this turning this direction, and you're never going down. You're not going into the whole piece. You're only working off maybe 2 inches of one of the side of, like, at 3 o'clock. And what that tool is wanting to do, it's wanting to pull away from you. Please understand, you could not do this. I don't even think you could do it without tearing up your job on a straight drill. You got to have the 90-degree angle. You got to have the right angle, because you're holding it like a grinder, but you wouldn't dare put this on a high-speed grinder. With that bit right there, I was able to run it maybe at, I don't know, 700 RPMs, 600 RPMs, real slow. It was a real slow cutout. If you got this thing running at crazy high speeds, you might as well be, trying to charm a rattlesnake. So anyway, I think that would make sense. And what's cool is you get a feel. You can go. It's better if you go right to left, because you're kind of cutting into it. But I'm pretty good with the feel, and I was able to go back and forth, back and forth. But what you can do is just ease into it and do not push. You're just letting it kind of skirt across the thing, and keep in mind it's running that way. For the finish shaping, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Don't dare do that. But if I'm sitting here with a 1/2 inch of maple, I'll be damned if I'm going to get my chisel out and put blisters on my fingers. That will wear you out so fast doing that by hand. You need to do that with a tool. If you've never worked with a hole saw, completely erase what I just told you. They're incredibly dangerous. Do not dare attempt that. Go to your 30 grit, 60 grit sanding discs. I don't know if you could get these at like a Harbor Freight, or I don't think Home Depot. I got these from Joe's Fiberglass in Fort Lauderdale when I was restoring my boat. These are probably Mirka, Mirka. No, it's a 3M. It's a 3M fiber disc. So Mirka is a good brand as well. But you put that, now you can put this on a grinder. And you can take a variable speed, like a variable speed control, like you would run a router, and then you slow the grinder down. And oh man, the slower you can get the tool to run, the more aggressive the cut. And when I was doing shape work on my boat, because I didn't mention my boat was a cedar hull on mahogany and white oak, so everything was wood. I wasn't working with fiberglass. But I was able to take these discs, man, and just do incredible shaping, like around the bottom of the hull, around the hull, around the stem, and the like the front of the boat, all the beautiful compound curves and stuff. So anyway, you could use that, or you could even use like a little handheld orbital sander. They're not heavy duty enough to really work down a mass, but they're very nice for doing the finish work. So. Let me think just briefly before I end the video, because I'm trying to think what I should say or should not say if there's someone out there that has never done anything like this at all. And I can't really think of anything other than, if you've never done this before at all, then put blisters on your hands and do it with a chisel, or some sort of scraping. This little tool here, this is a awesome little tool. It fits onto a handle. This is called a microplane, I believe it's called. And let me find the. It's so fine. Yeah, okay. Here. And then when you're really down me see if I can find my pencil. When you're really down to getting close to your finish, and I'm going to do another video about once I get really close, then you'll start coming in here with pencil lines and marking all the spots, and then you can come in here with like your microplane. I don't have the body clamp, so I'm not going to be able to do it, but you can, and you can start, you'll just feel the body through the tool. By taking it off of the see that it has a handle on it. Damn, it's hard looking through this camera. It has a little handle on it, but once you get to back to that handle, you lose the connection to your surface. If you just take it off, and usually what I would do is put masking tape on the top and just hold it by hand, or let my finger go down in there. And it's amazing. You can really do, this is like when you're finishing it. When you're really getting down to, you don't want to risk making mistakes, and you can lean this over on an angle, you can stand it up, you can tilt it. There's just so many things you can do to start working in. And I'll show you some more things, such as like taking a radius bottom tool with heavy sandpaper on it, just, you know, going in it with the sandpaper and stuff like that. So I'm probably getting ahead of myself a little bit on that, but I just wanted to, I didn't want to go from a really rough state in the renovation or the restoration and then all of a sudden be sitting here looking at a really pretty top and not talk about, because I know what would have happened. I would have forgotten to mention the 3 different thicknesses on these 3 different planks, and I would have failed to remind you to pay attention to the height of your router bit and things like that, or like missing surfaces that you weren't anticipating running into. If I'd have just shaped it up to a real pretty state just to try to impress people, then I would have failed in my attempt for even doing this series, and I'm trying to help you guys pull this stuff off. Does it have to be maple? Could it have been mahogany? Yep. Could it have been poplar? Yep. I'm serious. If you're, in other words, if you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I don't have any maple. I don't have my dad's old miter box. You know, I can't go to the next door neighbor because we're not getting along very well right now. You know, if you're sitting there and you're asking yourself, what could I substitute? I could have fit in mahogany or poplar, and it would have worked really well. And it's paint grade, you know, you could finish it in. Would I do that for a client? Absolutely not. But if I won this off eBay or something, and I was trying to repair it myself, or let's say maybe this wasn't a Gibson. Let's say this was a copy, and I won it for almost nothing. And even if I messed it up, it's not the end of the world. Besides, I'm learning how to work on guitars, right? Then, yeah, go to Home Depot, go to Lowe's, or any of the stores out there, the big box, or your local hardware store. If you can find some maple, that's cool. But if not, just work with some poplar or any sort of white wood. I wouldn't really recommend a pine, but poplar is an incredible wood, and I don't have any up here now that I thought. Oh, that piece fell on the floor. I'll do some tap tone testing at the end of the video on poplar, and the reason I bring up the poplar is because Benedetto was talking about how some of the most prized historical violins that were in all the museums, they were shocked to discover that a lot of them were made out of poplar. They weren't maple, they were poplar. Some of the most beautiful Stradivarius, I believe Stradivarius, I may be wrong about that, but he was just talking about some of the old violins in the museums. They were poplar. Poplar is an incredible wood, very affordable, and it's on the shelf at your big box stores. Why do I say the big box stores? Because guess what they have? They have air conditioners. And if you've got a wood that's sitting in an air-conditioned climate, it's staying very stable. It's real dry. You didn't buy it from somebody off of pick your favorite, you know, local thrifty whatever shop that was laying in somebody's wet basement or in their backyard being rained on for 5 years. You know, you just go to the big box, or go to Woodcraft, buy this stuff off the shelf. It's it's much easier to work with. So I got a little long-winded on that, but I just want people to realize that you don't have to have prize maple. It doesn't have to be bird's eye, or it doesn't have to be figured, or it doesn't have to be, you know, any sort of flame or any of that jazz. It's going to sound incredible if the craftsmanship's there. So again, I hit 30 minutes. I wasn't expecting that, but I probably rambled a lot through this video, but I think I covered some of the high points. If you got any questions, just let me know. The next video probably won't be for another few days or so. I've got a lot to do on some of my other guitars, and I want to let this epoxy dry a little bit more as well. That way I'll be ready to do some tap tones, or tap tone testing. All right, thanks guys.